Hello and welcome to the Kim Iverson Show. Thank you guys so much for being here. We have a great show for you. Today we're going to be talking to Jen Perlman, who has a big announcement, which we're going to let her do as soon as we get her in here. So Jen Perlman, you probably recognize her. She primaried Debbie Wasserman-Schultz in 2020. She received at that time nearly 30% of the vote because Debbie is just so popular. She's really unpopular. She's one of my least favorites, if not my actual least favorite person in Congress. You probably, you know Debbie. Debbie Wasserman-Schultz is a giant Hillary Clinton supporter. She was the chair of the DNC. She's now often seen sitting in Congress being very hostile to people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Matt Taibbi, and Michael Schellenberger. Debbie is also one of AIPAC's top recipients in the very safely blue area of Florida District 25. Jen, on the other hand, is for one, what I love about Jen is that she's willing to talk to anybody and everybody. She never talks down to people. Jen and I don't agree on everything politically, and she never shuns me, she's just not that type of person. She'll talk to anybody and everybody, even if you totally disagree. Jen is a practicing attorney. She has a podcast, which you may have seen, called Generational Change. So we're going to get to her big announcement happening right here on the show. Jen Perlman, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Kim. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, big announcement. Let's hear the big announcement.
Big announcement. I am running for Congress again, challenging Debbie Wasserman-Schultz in Florida's 25th.
Woo!
Have to say in the primary. So I am running as a Democrat in the primary.
Okay.
And well, people don't understand that. It's the only way to win. Again, it's the only potential way, let's say. We're just too heavy blue.
Okay, we're going to get into that. We're going to get into the why you're running as a Democrat.
Yeah, okay.
But first, you're challenging the awful Debbie Wasserman-Schultz. How does this woman continue? How long has she been sitting in that seat? First of all, what's the district? Tell us where are you in Florida?
Okay, so we are in South Florida. We are Broward County, which is where Fort Lauderdale is. Now, greater Fort Lauderdale is not in us. We're kind of just south of that, and we're pretty much a straight rectangle across the whole county. So for actually regarding gerrymandered, we're pretty square, literally. We're pretty square. So I got to say it's pretty fair, I think. So that's good. And so we have some parts, many municipalities, probably like 6 municipalities, but it's a square through Broward County.
Okay, I'm looking at this. Let's look at the map. So Broward County, Florida.
And we're like, if you were to draw a rectangle sort of on the bottom half of that.
So it does include Fort Lauderdale?
A little bit. We have a little corner that goes over to Fort Lauderdale, and then it drops down under the airport. And then right around the airport is where we drop under and go down to the county line, down to Dane County line.
So it's a perfect rectangle almost.
Yeah.
And that is the district that Debbie Wasserman-Schultz has held that seat for how long?
20 years.
20 years.
Yeah. And then, before that, she represented in our state house. Part of that district, so she was handed a seat a long time ago in the state house. She came out of school basically and walked right into an open seat in our Florida legislature. Never really had to run for it, never had to campaign for it. And then this seat was literally handed to her too when she termed out of our legislature. We do have term limits there. So when she termed out of there, she was essentially handed an open seat, which at the time I think was called District 20. I don't know. We've been redistricted. So now we're 25. And it's not as favorable to her as it once was. The shape, the size, the contents of our district, our demographics. This time we have lost all of our portion of Dade County. Now, we used to go down into Dade County along the beach in the wealthy, affluent, very Jewish areas of Aventura, Bal Harbor, Surfside, and all of those have been cut off of our district. So she lost that demographic. And for her, that's very scary. And for us, it's it's amazing. Because I don't know if you know, but Aventura, I don't know if people are familiar with the Aventura area, but it's uncanvassable. It's all high rise. It's all gated. You cannot canvass there. So for a grassroots campaign, it's virtually impossible because the only way in is mailers and TV ads. So she, of course, blankets it because she gets however much, money. So for us to lose that is so good. And what we gained is a very working class, very Haitian focused demographic of Miramar.
Okay.
which is definitely better for us because we can canvass it.
When did that change happen, did you say?
Yeah, so that's why I didn't run in 22. This is what was really interesting because technically it happened in like June of 22. They released the actual district lines. Our primary is in August. So if I had wanted to run in 22, I would have only had 2 months to know my exact district, which is why I knew that that would have been a bad idea. So I knew they were redistricting. I'm like, we can't do this. And that was really the holdup of us even considering going again. I knew that it would, and had I done it, it would have been a complete waste of time because our district changed.
Did she have a challenger in 2022?
She did, actually, in the Democratic primary, a nice guy by the name of Robert Milwee, who is now my treasurer.
Oh, that's awesome.
He had called me when he was running against her and said, hey, they're not even letting me in the Dem clubs. They're not, is there anything? What should I do? And I basically said, nothing, you're screwed. And he and I became fast friends after that. So now, and he happens to be a CPA, which is very helpful to me.
Right. Well, sure, if he's going to be your treasurer.
Yep.
Okay, so how did he do in 2022? Because there was there was the line change before the primary.
There was the line change before the primary. And what's interesting is he didn't campaign really. He didn't do anything. He literally put his name on the ballot and didn't do anything. And he got 10%.
Without doing anything. Without anybody really knowing who he was or anything.
And that's what we call the anti-Debbie vote. The anti-Debbie vote is about 10%, which is pretty good. You know, most people, if you're running first time against an incumbent and you get 3, you know, it's like, that's good. So to get 10 with nothing, it's a sign about her.
Yeah. Yeah. And things have changed since then. Since she's last won, you know, she made quite a bit of news going up against Matt Schellenberger and Michael Schellenberger and Matt Taibbi, calling them so-called journalists, being very, very pro-censorship, which I would imagine is not going over well in Florida. Of all the you know, Florida's a freedom state. I don't know exactly how that county is in particular, and we'll get into that, but Florida was where people flocked to after the pandemic or during the pandemic. People are very outraged by the what's going on in schools and what's being taught to kids, and they're very, you know, they're outraged by what's going on with social media and stuff. And so I would imagine that she's growing less popular because she has put herself on the opposite side of many of those issues that people who've been flocking to Florida care. Do you think that's going to be a factor?
I think right now, actually, the big line in the sand is going to be Israel between her and me. That's going to be the huge thing. But she's very unpopular here, with the exception of her group of like blue, no matter who sycophants. Most of them are very old. And the truth is that every election cycle, a lot of her voters die off and she doesn't get a lot of new ones. So it's a very fixed market for her. I don't know how much the censorship thing matters in Broward, because Broward, you know, we're blue. Our county was fighting against DeSantis during COVID. Okay. So this county is its whole own mess, but she is just in general really very unpopular, except within her little fiefdom.
So why is that area so blue?
You know what? It's a combination of factors. I think a lot of it has to do with the older people. Traditionally, we have a very elderly population. And back in the day, you have to, like, people that the Democrats were people fighting for Medicare, fighting for Social Security. And a lot of those people have just sort of stayed blue, like they just have. And then we have minority population. Excuse me. And we know that, and especially Black women are like very loyal to the Democratic Party. And we see a lot more Black men leaving, but the Black women, and I hate being generalizing, it's not like they're a monolith, but if you just look at the demographics, and I think that's a big part of it. So we'll see what happens here now. I really do not know, now that we've lost that chunk of Dade County, what it's really going to look like. It only helps us.
Yeah. So explain this chunk that is no longer there. You said that this is a heavily Jewish area.
Yeah.
Is all of Broward County not heavily Jewish? The rest of it?
It's a mix. It's a mix. And what it really comes down to, more than how Jewish it is who votes. And unfortunately, in primaries, when you're getting like 14% voter turnout, the population that tends to come out and vote in Broward tends to be our older demographic, our, they more fear-based people. They're concerned. They're used to Debbie. They know Debbie, so it's really about holding hands and kind of guiding people like, okay, it's really not that scary over here. And I think that's what it really is for us, is when you get low voter turnout in a primary, it's a very specific demographic that takes the time to go out and vote. And so our job is to get a lot of other people to go out and vote. And that's always what it is for somebody coming in grassroots, is to get people that don't normally vote out to vote. And that's always our biggest challenge. But
that chunk that is no longer in Broward County or part of the voting district, it didn't move to a different county? I mean, or did they redraw the county lines?
Dane County, but our district used to, instead of being a rectangle, it used to be a rectangle with this little like peninsula that hung down through the rich part of the coast of Dane County, and they cut off that limb.
Okay.
And I think it must be now Frederica Wilson. I believe that now is her.
And did that area come out to vote in the primaries?
Oh, yes, that area comes out to vote in the primaries. And even though it's not a huge part of our population, they're diligent. And especially the people that we know would come out and vote on the Israel issue.
Okay.
Taking that out of our thing right now is big.
Okay. Are you Jewish?
I am Jewish.
Okay. So
you're second generation South Florida Jew.
Okay, so this isn't like you wouldn't possibly get the Jewish vote and Debbie would get it because she's Jewish, right?
No,
you're
correct.
both Jewish.
We're both Jewish.
But you differ when it comes to Israel. And this is why did you choose to, running a campaign is a lot of work, I would imagine. And I would imagine that it's stressful and there's a lot that goes into it. So why did you choose to do this again? What was it that compelled you? Besides the fact that Debbie Wasserman-Schultz is one of the worst. She's one of the worst in Congress, alongside my congressperson, which is Adam Schiff, who's
good God.
Yeah, I know.
Really gaining power. Oh,
I know. Tell me about it. He's going to become a senator. At this point, because of the primary yesterday, Super Tuesday, I was hoping that Steve Garvey's the Republican that's running for Senate.
Right.
And he ended up getting the second place spot, which was by design. They do this here in California because it's a jungle primary. So Adam Schiff didn't want to run against Katie Porter. He didn't want to run against Barbara Lee because they're both Democrats. So his campaign actually spent a lot of money to kind of boost Steve Garvey, Steve Garvey didn't really do much campaigning, but he's the Republican, knowing that if he faces a Republican in the general election, which he will now, that the Katie Porter vote, the Barbara Lee vote are all going to go to Adam Schiff. And so now Adam Schiff.
I don't know that right now.
It's California. It's like where it's blue. It's blue. There's just nothing. All the red left, most of the red left has fled the state.
They came here.
Exactly. They've gone there. So Adam Schiff will be the next senator. And he's one of the worst too. He's right up there with Debbie. Mm-hmm. But Debbie's pretty awful. So, anything to get, she's awful. She's really awful.
Oh,
and not only was she sitting in that seat, but she also was the head of the DNC for a while. Mm-hmm. She's not anymore, right?
No, she stepped down after the whole cheated Bernie fiasco. And then, of course, even though she did that, Hillary decided, well, that makes you perfect to work on our campaign. So she went over there and she still finds herself. I think she still fancies herself very much a kingmaker and very much the person in charge. She runs around down here like she's the queen of South Florida.
Okay, so what compelled you again? In 2020, I get it. Nobody likes Debbie, or at least we do. People there apparently do.
Small percentage. Remember, we got 14% voter turnout in a primary. So if you think about it, how many people actually do choose her?
Very good point. And how many people actually even know what she's up to and how she's been and how she's behaved and the things that she says.
That's all going to change very, very soon.
Okay, so what is it that you said that the big thing that really is compelling you to run against Debbie is Israel, the Israel issue?
Yeah, that's huge for me right now. And the truth is I would have probably done it anyway. I got to tell you, you had brought up before about when she was talking to Michael Schellenberger and Matt Taibbi, and when she is sitting on committee and we're watching our congressperson question people. And I'm watching how she talks to people. And I encourage everybody to go back and look at clips of Debbie Wasserman-Schultz, how she talks to people. The way she spoke to RFK, the way she speaks to people is completely unacceptable. I do not want my representative out there in the world talking to people like that. And I remember, because we had Matt Taibbi on the show like a couple days later after that, and I said to him, so let me get this straight. You're sitting there voluntarily. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, and this woman opens a mouth like that to you and you're still sitting there?
Yeah,
See,
right.
this is what blows my mind. This is what blows my mind. Because if someone opened a mouth like that to me, I'm getting up and walking out.
She's a caricature.
I'm getting up and walking out. I don't understand that. And if I weren't able to walk out, and if I were in a situation where I couldn't leave and somebody spoke like that to me, then the other option is I'm going to put my fist in their mouth to shut them up. Because I would never let anybody speak to me that way. And my first instinct is to walk away. Right. And I can't believe they sat there and entertained that. Power to them, power to RFK. But if you look at how the other members of the committee speak, it isn't that way. And there are a few other turds that do speak shitty to people. Yeah, there are, right. But it's not the norm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, she's definitely a caricature. She does remind me of somebody who just walked out of a Harry Potter movie. Like she's part of the Ministry of Truth and she's persecuting people.
She looks like the bankers.
Oh, well,
terrible.
Okay. So what is it on the so you two differ on the Israel issue?
Completely. Like we couldn't be more far apart if we tried.
What is her stance?
Oh, she is Zionist to the core. She is a Zionist to the core. Whether or not it's ideological or AIPAC induced, I don't know. And to be honest, I really don't care why. But I can probably surmise that she and I were raised pretty similarly on that. We're both Ashkenazi Jews raised in the United States, and we were raised, and in general, in this country, to be very anti-Arab. We are raised to think that Arabs are lesser, less civilized, dirty, and want to kill us. That is brainwashed into us from a very young age. And it's absurd. And it's taken me the better part of 10 years to deprogram myself. And then once you see it, you can't unsee it. And so now I feel like this might be the hill that I die on. I have a lot of regret. I was used as a tool in ethnic cleansing when I was in Israel. I was there as a teenager. They take groups over there all the time on mass propaganda tours. I was there on a program called Alexander Muss High School in Israel. And we lived there in dorms for 6 weeks. And you study and go visit the places. And all the while is constant Zionist brainwashing and propagandizing. And I've realized that where they were taking us was to places that we weren't supposed to be. And we, of course, thought it was so cool because you're traveling with an armed guard and he's got this big machine gun and we're in high school and oh, how cool, we have our own armed guard. But you really have to wonder who uses human shields when you're sending teenagers somewhere where you think they need an assault rifle to protect them. So clearly we were places we weren't supposed to be. And I also know that they have us planting trees in parts of East Jerusalem. Well, now it might not be that, but that was where we were planting. And now I know what I was doing. And at the time, I had no idea what I was doing. So I have a lot of like a personal atonement in my part in ethnic cleansing, but that's why this will be the hill that I now have to die on. And this woman sits there and has our entire Congress sign a resolution that says that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, and stood on the steps of our Capitol and actually said that if somebody doesn't support that, they have no soul. Now, personally, I believe that if anybody is an expert on the soul list, it is Debbie Wasserman-Schultz. So, kudos to her on knowing that. But the scariest part, Kim, is that other than a handful of people, they all signed that. So in other words, if I walk into Congress with enough money and say 2 + 2 is 5, they'll sign that too. And that has put me over the edge. I will spend every breath I have telling people that Zionism and Judaism are completely different things. In fact, Zionism is anti-Semitic, and as a program has been using the Jews forever. So the Jews, like me and my great grandmother and all the people in my family that I am furious on behalf of because they died before knowing the truth, who spent their lives and their money giving to Israel. Like their last dying breath was, Israel, next year in Jerusalem. Like everything was about Israel. And now I know they were all lied to. Yeah. I have levels of rage that I haven't had ever since October 7th. And I am just like, I am done. I am done. And I'm already getting threats and I'm already getting phone calls. And I know AIPAC is going to bring it. Bring it. I am so done with their bullshit. I am sick and tired of people being bullied by AIPAC. What if we had, everybody think about this. What if we had the American-Russian Political Affairs Committee? Yeah. And what if the American-Russian Political Affairs Committee said, we're going to spend $100 million getting rid of incumbents? Do you think that the Democrats would be cool with that?
Right. Yeah, we're going to get rid of pro-Ukraine incumbents. We're going to spend all of our money on this, which AIPAC is now spending record levels of money trying to which is interesting. It's like all this money could go to so many other good causes, but instead what they're doing is they want to eradicate anybody that they think is a threat to Israel. And it is insane that it's an American what does AIPAC stand for? So it's American Israel
Political Affairs Committee.
Yeah, could you imagine? Or if it was China, the American China, right? Anybody anti-China, they're going to primary and spend a bunch of money on.
Well, people should question very much, and this is a huge thing. Why don't the lobbyists from AIPAC have to register as foreign agents when every other country's lobbyists do?
Right. Right. Yeah. Especially when it's because they put American in there. So if you put American Israel, it's okay.
But it shouldn't be. And actually the way that they really they launder it, because as long as the money is coming from stateside, it technically that's how it works. But yet you're still lobbying on behalf of a foreign government.
Right.
So to me, the fact that the money comes from this country is irrelevant. What if you had a whole bunch of local Chinese people get together? Would we again be in favor of them lobbying on behalf of China just because their money is American?
Right.
And again, I have nothing against the Chinese. Like literally, I am all for the Chinese and the Russians. I don't want any, but I'm just pointing out the complete
the hypocrisy of this.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I have no aim against the Chinese. Love the Chinese.
Yeah, I think that, but I don't want, no matter how I feel about any country in the world, I don't want any foreign lobbying to that level. I think a foreign dignitary, of course, foreign dignitaries can come over and plead with our government about whatever is affecting their countries. But that would be obvious, right? They're obviously the foreign dignitaries that are assigned to come to the United States to plead their case, to try to get lawmakers but not with money. It would have to be with reasons, with arguments, with logic, with whatever else they've got, like, hey, we could do trade deals, like however they want to negotiate.
Crazy. Now you're talking crazy because you're bringing reason into the mix. Actually, it's funny because that's my position on all lobbying. Actually, people want to get rid of lobbyists. I actually went to law school to be a lobbyist. I have no problem with lobbyists. It's the actual ultimate form of democracy.
Sure,
it's the corporate lobbyists and the money that's the problem. And when we don't include nuance, it's a problem. If I'm sitting in Congress and there's some bill that comes up about agriculture, okay, I don't know that. Like, you rely on experts in those fields, and those experts tend to represent the people of that industry, whatever that industry is. We need those voices in Congress. We need lobbyists to inform people what's what. The problem is the money.
Yeah.
But, think about it. Like back in the day, the farmers of the Grange, back in, the Midwest, it's like that was their lobbying group because everybody can't go and talk to their congressperson. So you need lobbying.
Yeah.
So it bothers me when we try to throw the whole thing out. Oh, lobbyists. I'm like, no.
It's the money, right?
It's the money, because I went to law school dreaming that I was going to be a lobbyist for like Barry Scheck and the Innocence Project. Like that was my, dream job. But so it would never have been about the money. So I think people need to be very clear. It's gotten very contorted and twisted like everything else we do, but lobbying in and of itself is the ultimate form of democracy.
Yeah, it's pleading your case. It's informing and pleading your case.
Correct.
I agree with you. Whenever people talk about getting rid of lobbying, and maybe even I've said it in that way because right now it's synonymous with the money, right?
Correct.
So we say, we got to get rid of the lobbies because the lobbies are the money. But really, we do have to separate that out. And it's not lobbying as an act is totally fine. And even
Correct.
organizations going and talking to their congressperson and saying, hey, we're from XYZ,
Yeah.
we believe this, and here's our pamphlet. This
Yeah.
is what we want to educate you on the truth of what the impact is of XYZ thing,
Yeah.
right? That needs to happen because
Correct.
our congresspeople don't know. They get elected and then they don't, there's all these a myriad of issues.
Yeah.
There's no way that they would know, and they should hear both sides out.
Yeah.
But that's not what happens. What happens is they just collect whoever can donate to their campaign the most amount of money is the one that they end up siding with. And that's what we've
Yeah.
seen with APAC, which is yeah, and I'm with you on that. Swap out Israel with China. People would go nuts if they swap that
Absolutely.
out with China. Would be absolutely furious. But it's okay for whatever reason because it's Israel. And I think that's because Israel has been well ahead of the game on that for decades and decades. I
Oh,
mean, even when Israel started as a country in 1948, that country received more American donation dollars than any other cause ever. I
yeah.
mean,
And let me
they
be
received a
clear.
boatload of American money that
And let
went
me be
over to that foreign
clear.
country.
A lot of that was coming from people like my family who were working class, busting their asses. Like my poppy was a mailman. My grandmother worked in a hair salon. Like working class people that were sending their money for
Yeah.
Israel. Okay. So that, and like the people that are now doing it, it's not that. Now it's a very much a class divide. There is a huge divide in the Zionism, and it is class. You see the people that are generally standing up for Israel are wealthy. They're the wealthy Jews.
What do you consider wealthy?
Somebody that doesn't have to work for a living.
Okay. Because I know I live in a Jewish neighborhood. I live in an Israeli immigrant neighborhood, actually.
That's a whole different story. Israelis and Jews is a completely different thing.
Well, it's a mixed area, of course, but there are a lot of Israelis where I live, a lot. And, but there's also a lot of just Russian Jews or Ukrainian, like Russian Jews live around here, a lot of them as well. And I will say that, I mean, I talk. My neighbors are all Jewish, and I talk to them, and they are all still pretty pro-Israel, and they're not. They have to work. I mean,
it's true, but the degree at which they're willing to fight for it, donate to it, and deal it's like you'll have Jews in that category that they'll still say they stand by Israel, but they're not the ones that are pushing AIPAC. They're not the ones that are really driving the narrative. They're more just like that's just all they know.
That's all they know.
That are really behind this are the real moneyed interests, Jewish and Christian. And again, very clearly people need to know there are more Christian Zionists in this country than there are Jews in the world.
Yeah.
So Zionism and Judaism are not the same, not even a little. So it's very frustrating. And my goal is to live in a world post-Zionism. Judaism's been around long before it, and it will be around long after it. Because I feel very proud to be Jewish. Like that to me is very cool because I know where my people came from and the suffering, and my great grandparents left Russia with their businesses on fire and the pogroms. And so it's like I have a lot of pride in where I'm from and how my people, my ancestors, did for us and the next generations. Like I have a lot of pride in that. And that is actually part of my immense anger about how they were manipulated and duped and lied to about an ethno-Zionist white supremacist state that they were told had no people there. There was nobody there. The Arabs just hate us because we're Jewish. They're just trying to take away our way of life. They just hate us because we're Jewish. No, that's not at all why, but that's what we thought. And so, my family had no clue.
Let's get into what you were taught when you were raised. This is interesting. What were you so you're taught Israel is what?
Israel is not only the nation state of the Jewish people. I mean, that obviously it's like that's ingrained, but it is necessary for our safety and survival.
Right.
So what you're dealing with here, and we all know, I don't know, people know, just quick recap. Zionism started in the late 1800s, made its way over. I'm kind of condensing.
Well, radical Zionism. I mean, I think the concept of Zionism had been around even prior to that, but it wasn't the radical Zionism, the movement. Yeah.
Actually find a place. Okay. Like that started somewhere in the late 1800s. But the problem with it is that it was really never about helping the Jews. It was really more about originally Jews feeling alienated and persecuted and feeling that almost sort of the ideas that Jews almost encompassed what they were taught about themselves. Like, we are not considered real Europeans. We are not white. We are not this. And in order for us to be taken seriously as a people, we need to have our own land, our own language, like this whole sort of setup of stuff in order to have a voice at the table and in order to have any strength.
I think also it's important for people to understand the context of the time.
Yes.
At that time, when Zionism really cropped up with Theodor Herzl and then the subsequent leaders who ended up taking the mantle with Zionism, nationalism, ethno-nationalism was a big idea, and it was a popular and accepted idea at that time. That's at the same time and in the same region of the world. It all came from that what would be Austria, Ukraine, Russia, Germany.
Yes.
That section of the world, that thinking became really, really popular. And that's where we even see the rise of like Stepan Bandera for the Banderites in Ukraine, where they came up with this real, like, we want a nationalist movement of just people who speak Ukrainian to be, and anybody else has got to get out. In Germany, we saw the rise of that ideology as well. It was actually not only, it was an accepted and popular political ideology to think people should be separated by their kind.
Yes.
And they should live amongst and flourish together with the common language and the common people and the common beliefs. And so that is, Zionism didn't crop up out of, it cropped up at the same time as all these others. We've now learned, however, like with Nazism and that sort of that ethno-nationalism idea that, of course, was defeated, we now have learned that it's a dangerous idea, because what you end up doing, you start ethnically cleansing people. And then now
you way to have an ethno state.
Right, that's the only way. If you're going to
ethno cleanse.
Well, unless you're going to build it literally on a piece of land where nobody lives, right? Then you can have your own spot. You pop up, you flourish, whatever. I don't have any issue with that in particular.
They should have given them a part of Germany. And,
that's what actually,
and truthfully, and again, I'm not into assigning ethno states at all, but
right.
In terms of being amongst their own kind, would have been staying with the white people in Europe. Okay, that's the point.
In an enclave or something that was carved out, I suppose, but really the entire idea, what we now know is that the entire idea is a wrong idea to say this group of people needs to live amongst themselves in an ethno state, and that's what's going to be best. That is what Nazism believed. That is what the Banderites believed. That is what Zionism believes. There's other ethno-nationalist groups that cropped up also around that same time in that part of the world. And it is, and that idea has caused problems time and time and time again. But for whatever reason, the others get condemned. I mean, in Ukraine, they're kind of having a reckoning with that right now. But because Russia's come in and said, we're not allowing this. You can't have this ideology anymore. But for Israel, we haven't really had that reckoning until now. I feel like it's becoming more and more. People are now saying more and more. Even myself, I went over to the West Bank, came back.
I loved your coverage of all that. You did great work.
Well, I up until very recently, and it was only until I talked to Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro, I had him on the show, and that is when I myself dropped the two-state solution idea.
I was always glad to see it too. I was so glad to see it.
Yeah, now I'm a one-stater. I really thought, no, you got to keep them separated. Yes, fine, the Jewish people can have their own nation. Okay, like they just have to live in peace. You have to give the Palestinians an actual sovereign nation, not just like a enclave that's still run by Israel. But now I'm like, no, the ideology is wrong. You cannot have an ethno nation like this. It's just not right.
Nope.
But
it's interesting because even if, and this is what's fascinating, Kim, let's say hypothetically a two-state solution was a good idea. Like, let's say, okay, that's a good idea. Israel's made it very clear that they're not doing that. They've made it very clear that they will not accept any existence of a Palestinian state whatsoever.
Right.
So why are we still even considering something that they've completely just said is not going to happen? So the fact that we're even, like, that people still talk about that, first of all, two-state solution was never real.
Right.
That was always a Zionist talking point to sort of keep people quiet about complaining about what they're doing. So
Right.
they never had any intention of that ever happening. And if
Yeah.
there's lots of books out there that show this information now, whether it's Elon Pappy or Rashid Khalidi or whatever it is, like there are books where this is very documented. There was never an intent to have a Palestinian state there once the Zionists were there.
So what do you think it is that makes Jews in America? So you were born and raised here. You never lived in Israel except you did the 6-week stint there, just kind of a summer camp, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What is it when a Jewish person in America hears, well, we have to have this foreign nation as our homeland. Why don't then, if you're taught that, then logically, why don't all Jews move to the homeland?
A lot of them did for a long time. And what's interesting, and that was the goal. Let me tell you,
that was the goal. Yeah.
That was the goal. After I was there, I remember leaving there and I wanted to make Aliyah and go and serve in the IDF and all that. Like I was in that. I was going to graduate and go back and do that.
Sure.
Luckily, I learned a few things and decided that wasn't a good plan. But it's ingrained in us from such a young age that we are not safe without Israel.
So then when did you ever question then, why aren't we going?
Well, no, because so many people I know were going. So like I knew
but the people that go, okay, I get it, because that's what you're told. You're told, hey, this is our homeland.
Well, the goal is to eventually go there. Like like my grandparents, all them, if you would ask them, they would love to be able to pick up and move there. Like it was sort of like that was their long-term plan for their next generations, would be for everyone to eventually get there. Now, in terms of like their socioeconomic conditions and what was really feasible is a whole other story.
Yeah.
But when you take a whole bunch of post-Holocaust Jews and fill them with more fear, that they now have an actual legitimate experience that backs that up. All right. So the Jewish fear of genocide is very real. Yeah. That's not hyperbolic. It is real. And Jews have suffered that forever. Anti-Semitism is very, very real. And so it's easy to prey upon Jews in that way. And it's gotten lesser and lesser because now we have access to information. Like when I was little, I couldn't have Googled, and there was nobody on the ground over in Palestine showing me footage that would in any way negate what I was being told by the people that had the narrative. So I had no reason to question it. Now, no. And they're still trying to gaslight us, which is fascinating. They are gaslighting us like we're in the 90s and we can't just look at this online. It's just bizarre to me. I almost feel like saying to people like Debbie, the 90s called, man, they want their politics back.
And their hair.
Oh, good God. I don't know. Yeah, but it's like, you cannot gaslight people that are watching something in real time.
Yeah, it's always fascinating to me I understand somewhat coming from a refugee family from Vietnam. When I was growing up, they often talked about going back. That was their homeland, Vietnam. They wanted it to
they were from there.
They were from there. They came here in a matter of dire circumstance. It wasn't really a choice. They fled. They came here, and then they talked. When I was growing up, there was which always made me really afraid because I didn't know Vietnam. I only knew America. I was born and raised here. So whenever I'd hear about us all going back, I'd be like, to where, to this foreign country. I mean, to me, I'm like, this is a foreign place. I don't want to go. I want to stay. Yeah. And ultimately they stay because their kids are born here. Their kids are raised American. They start businesses, they buy homes, and then they just themselves stop talking about it and they become fully American, right? Yeah. So I understand it for refugees saying, I want to go back. I dream of going back, or even immigrants who say, okay, I came to America because my country was poor and I was trying to make a life and I wanted to make money and then go back or take my skills to my country or something. But the Jewish, what you're taught as an American Jew none of your family have ever lived, but there's this historical story of 3,000 years ago, Jews came from this land, right?
Well, we all did. See, that's the thing. We all came from a Black woman in Ethiopia, people. So
at the end of the day, we're all from Africa.
Right. So it doesn't. So every single person then could say, I was once from there. Yes, we all were. It's the cradle of civilization. I don't know what it is other than they were very fear-mongered and into thinking that we would only be safe if we were together in Israel, or even this concept of if we're not safe, we would at least be all together. It's very fatalistic, and it's very much coming from what was their real trauma, and I get that. But now, like every other type of generational trauma, we just keep passing it on, and it's just got to stop. Israel not only doesn't keep us safe, it makes us less safe.
Yeah.
This constant, it's creating more and more anti-Semitism. And that's another reason about running against Debbie. I don't want that to be a representation of Jewish people.
Right.
That, to me, if I were watching that and hearing her, how she was talking on the steps of the Capitol, if I weren't anti-Semitic, I might be anti-Semitic by the time I was done listening to her.
Yeah.
And there's no way that that type of wording and language and condescension is not going to push people in an antagonistic manner. I mean, it's just not going to happen when you're sitting, because most people are watching you and know that you're full of crap. Just because you could get everyone else in Congress to sign on to your nonsense because you and AIPAC have bullied them into it. I don't know. But the rest of us are watching it, and we don't think that. And I'm telling you, people are not liking it. And when you keep saying Judaism is Zionism, Zionism is Judaism, with the Jewish star on the flag, yeah. So now you're purposefully going out of your way to equate Jews with genocidal people. Well, that's not going to help us.
Right.
So I do not want people looking at someone like her as any sort of representation of the Jewish community. And so I am going to do everything I can to counterbalance that.
How are you being received within the Jewish community? So I would imagine outside of the Jewish community, you're probably getting support. I would imagine people are less likely to support Israel, obviously, unless they're Zionist Christians or they're Jewish, right? I think those two groups are the most, and just old timers, that just, they were born and raised with a certain propaganda in the news their entire lives, right? So the boomers. But how are you being received in the Jewish community with
locally?
Yeah.
We're going to find out, aren't we?
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm wondering, if you've tested around a little bit.
Yeah. The only anecdote that I really have is at where I do Pilates. And there has been, in the past few years, a huge influx of Israelis here. And people should wonder about that. If Israel's so great, why are you all leaving? And I will say since 2014, so since Netanyahu's been back in there, the pattern has been huge. We're seeing the influx of Israelis to South Florida in the past 10 years has been massive. So, which then begs the question, is it really so good there? But so there's...
and also what's interesting, by the way, is, like I said, I live in a real Israeli area. I haven't seen one hostage poster. I haven't seen one Israeli flag flying, nothing. And not one. And I mean, nobody has said anything. Good. I have seen nothing. There was one neighbor of mine who put out a Free Palestine flag. And they're also Jewish, everybody around here is. So they were Jewish, putting up the Free Palestine flag, American Jews. And they were not Israeli Jews, they were Americans. But the only ones who complained about it were not the Israeli neighbors, interestingly. It was the American Jews who complained about the Free Palestine and not the Israeli Jews.
Yeah, see, this is where we're just getting all out of, like, everybody is so tribal. It's constant. It's like we are constantly looking for more things to divide us and keep everybody fighting. And this really adds to it. I had come down on this issue long before October 7th. On my podcast, we had started a year and a half ago a series called Deconstructing Zionism. And I've been hosting different people and talking about stuff like that, like rabbis and people that have really seen what's wrong with that philosophy. And so this is something that isn't just from me since October, right? Like, this has been going on. But since October, the group of Israelis at my Pilates studio apparently have started talking shit about me behind my back. Now, I don't know these women. I don't talk to them. They probably saw it on social media, whatever. But one of them had the nerve to go up to one of my friends and start talking shit about me. Now, as I always say, I don't start things, but I will finish them. So I then took it upon myself to redo my entire gym wardrobe. And now every shirt has watermelons on it. And so now every time... Oh, no, I'm the watermelon queen at Pilates. And I even have watermelon earrings. And when I don't wear those to Pilates. But every time I go to Pilates, those women are sitting across looking at me in full-on watermelon wear. Now, I'm calling it watermelon psychological warfare. But what I would suggest to people is don't start with me.
Yeah.
Just don't start with me. I wasn't going to, I wouldn't have brought it up to them. That's my Pilates studio. I don't need to talk politics. I don't bring it up. I don't walk around doing that. If you're going to start with me,
yeah, this is, I've noticed that the fiercest, staunchest anti-Israel or anti-Zionism People I know are Jewish themselves. I do feel like it does need to be an internal debate
Yeah.
amongst, Jews amongst Jews need to have this real reckoning and uh,
It's a come to
really,
Jesus moment
yeah,
for
come to
you.
Jesus moment. Well, that's what all the Zionist Christians. So what's interesting about the Zionist Christians is that ultimately they do believe in eradicating all Jews. I mean,
Oh,
that's the idea, is
yeah.
that
We all
Jesus
need to
comes
be
back.
together to die together for the rapture to happen.
Well, it's not die necessarily. I mean, there would be that, but it would also be conversion, just mass
Right, the
conversion.
opportunity for us to take Christ as our Savior so that
Right,
we can yes, I know the
right.
options. I've seen their options. Yeah, to me, and I am at the point now where if I'm talking with you about a political situation and we're talking geopolitics and you reference the Bible or religion, I'm done talking to you. I'm
Yeah.
done talking to you. I don't care what your Bible said about Judea. I do
Well, I
not
mean, but
care.
I think my point is about Christian Zionism is that it's actually the most genocidal, I suppose,
For
of
sure.
all of them,
Oh yeah,
because
they're
they're
not friends with us. They don't want to be friends. We're the food. It's
well,
like
they
don't
just
be friends
believe
with food.
you're going to convert or die. I mean, that right? It's a very there will be no Jews at the
No.
end
Yeah, no.
when that is what the belief is in Christian Zionism. It is the most radical genocidal ideology of all of them.
And
Is
yet
that
people align with them. So you have to
yeah,
question people like Debbie and other Zionists that are willing to align with complete
right,
anti-Semites.
right? Who believe that Jews won't exist once
When
Jesus comes back?
it's like if you're in line with those people, at what point do you stop and be like, maybe I should rethink my position on this? Like it's fascinating me, but we're so entrenched. And again, with her, I don't know if it's APAC or personal ideology.
Have you been approached at all by APAC or like have they threatened you and said, "Don't you dare," or else?
Well, first of all, this is the first official day we're putting it out there. They haven't said anything to me. I don't imagine, given my history and my content that I've put out, that they would even bother to approach me. I really don't. I don't see that. I think they're going to throw everything they've got at me. I
Well,
think, and
they're just funding Debbie. I mean, one of the ways
oh,
they do it, they just fund the person who is in alignment with their
well, that
thinking.
and they'll be putting out their own pack nonstop shit about me and whatever. Fortunately, I have no skeletons. I have none. So it'll be interesting. All they're going to be able to do is call me a self-loathing Jew, which only appeals to the same small group of people over and over and over again. So it's not like there's nothing they're going to get on me. They're going to try. It'll be
Yeah.
interesting. I'd love to be a fly on the wall of whoever she has doing her investigation into me when he comes back and he's like, yeah, I got nothing. But
What about the Democratic Party? Okay, so let's talk about why
oh,
you're
they
running
don't
as a
like me
Democrat.
either here. They don't like me
Okay,
either.
so then why are you running as a Democrat? Tell us
Okay.
about the inner workings. Why not? Do you identify as a Democrat? Do you align with all the Democratic policies except Israel? Like, where are you on this?
So I do not align philosophically with Democrats, but I would like to say when I registered to vote when I was 18 and I registered as a Democrat, the party that was in my head when I registered, that's the party that in my mind I'm belonging to. And so I'm living according to what I in my mind think should be the Democratic Party, which would
You
be a
know who
party
that
of
sounds
labor.
like? That sounds like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who then went independent because he realized it's
And
not the same party.
I understand that. Now in my district, that's just not possible. So for people to understand this, there is no way to beat her in a general election. It will never happen in this district. We are just too gerrymandered for that. And not even gerrymandered. We're just naturally, it's very blue. I shouldn't even say, because now it is a pretty good square. So
Yeah.
it's just not going to happen. So you have to look at things strategically. It isn't a matter of whether or not I agree with the Democrats on all their issues. Because I don't. I mean, I'm pro-choice. They're pro-choice. I mean, of course, they didn't fight for it, but no, I am equally critical of both parties. I actually live to see a world with no parties. I am someone that when we talk about third party, yeah, I think we should have lots of parties since we're stuck
Yeah.
with parties. But I actually would prefer no parties. That would be my dream universe. But when I say I'm a Democrat, I believe in labor. I believe in caring for the least of these. I am against wars. I am most certainly against wars for profit. I am only in favor of using any sort of force if we are literally being threatened. I do not believe in, I would say, 99% of what is being done in this country right now with everything. With everything. And the majority of it, as we know, is the complete moneyed takeover of our government, of every branch, of the fourth estate, of everything. Like, we know the problem. We know what it is. It has nothing to do with the people. People are, for the most part, pretty reasonable about what they want. We know that most people support a woman's right to choose. We know that most people want to end these wars. And so it isn't the people, it's the parties. And so, no, I am not really aligned with them, but I am definitely more closer aligned with them historically than I would ever have been with a Republican. So, and in my county, so people know, that's it, you're one or the other, and we have closed primaries. So if you are not in a party, you do not get to participate in the primary. And she would be sitting, and that's why she's been sitting there for as long as she has.
So in the general election, there are Republicans in Broward County, right? So
yeah, we always have some. Chris Eddy, nice guy, he's going to be running this time. It's in the past, it's been a woman named Carla Spalding, who I also very much like. But yeah, no, there are Republicans.
But what percentage of the vote do they get?
Carla last time, and this was because it was a very unique election and the Republicans really swept the state in the 22. She got 10 points. She got within 10 points of Debbie, which is the closest that anybody's ever gotten in a general. But it was a very unusual year. I do not see that happening again, especially given that the only other major election that's going to be happening during our August election is a state Senate race. So we're not going to see that flux that we're gonna get. And even come November, the only big race that's on the ballot here is Rick Scott. And even though he is Republican, he is not supported like DeSantis is. So you're not going to see the people coming out in November full force for Rick Scott. Like, it's just not going to pull the state like it did in 22. And so the Republicans in this county, and for the most part, they know it. I go to all the Republican club meetings. I know them. I'm friendly with them. They like me. I don't have a problem getting along with all different people. But they do know that they're not winning that seat. They know it. They always have somebody in it, but they know they're not winning it.
What would it take to run as an independent if you were going to go down that road in that county? Could you get your name on the ballot in the general?
I could get my name on the ballot, but you won't win. You won't even come close. You'd be lucky to pull 5% as an independent. Everyone in this county well, even if you were in the general, let's say, and I'm as an independent, people are so tribal here. So you're going to have all the Republicans are going to vote Republican, all the Democrats are going to vote Democrat, and the independents, they don't even always come out and vote.
Yeah.
So it really depends on whose tribe motivates the most people to come out and vote in that election. And even though there are tons of independents, they're not that motivated right now. They're not feeling motivated. The truth is they're in the none of the above category. We're seeing uncommitted votes left and right.
Yeah.
So I don't feel that anybody is motivating people enough that it's not going to push the needle enough to the direction away from our Democratic majority here. It just won't. So I'm in a very safe blue seat. I really am. And as much as Debbie will try to tell people that if I win the primary, we'll lose to the Republican, that's just not how this works. That's her talking point.
Okay, so you're trying to primary Debbie Wasserman-Schultz on the Democratic ticket. The Democratic Party is going to ignore you, right? They're not going to have anything to do with you.
No.
They're 100% behind their queen.
Last time. I don't want anything to really do with them either. Not really. I mean, if we get enough momentum and we have money, which I believe this time is definitely going to be a much bigger put, like we're going to come out a lot stronger this time just with name recognition and stuff alone. But they might say, well, you can come and talk at this meeting, or you can, and I'll do that. If I'm invited to go and talk, I'll talk to them. But the last time I ran, I spent an inordinate amount of time trying to work my way in with them. Won't do that again. That's a complete waste of time. And so we have to go around them, unfortunately. And it's ironic because I am infinitely more Democratic than any of them are. I actually have true Democratic principles that I support that most of the Democrats in this area probably couldn't even tell you what is on their platform. They probably don't even know what's on their platform. They just say, vote blue, vote blue. Yeah. So no, I am not with them. But that's just the way our strategy, it's just the way it is here. I'm closer to them than the Republicans. Let's say that in theory.
Right. Sure. All right. So what do you need? So your campaigning is going to be hard. What do you have? I'm sure you've plotted this out. What's different this time than in 2020?
I mean, we spent the last, and I mean, my business partner and I, we took that campaign and transitioned it into a podcast, which we've been working for over 3 years now, building coalition, building connections, getting name recognition. And also the other thing that we do is serve. We're always out doing community service. My last campaign was a service-based campaign. This campaign will be a service-based campaign. We have volunteers that don't do any canvassing, that all they do is community service. We have, we actually, when we canvass, we actually ask people what we can do for them to help them. I've done everything from call mayors about potholes to, help somebody get her prescription fixed with her ophthalmologist, whatever it is. So when you do that, even if you don't win, you win. And this is why when I ran the first time, I'm like, there is no way I'm spending a year and a half of my life trying to win an office that will most likely not happen. So the only way to do it is to do a service campaign. So that way, regardless of what happens, I didn't waste my time. Yeah. And that's how I see this. This campaign is not about me winning this seat. Yes, that would be ideal. It would be lovely to get rid of Debbie Wasserman-Schultz and have somebody in there that can't be bought. But that's one tactic and strategy. I am very active in the outside. I believe organizing and activism is key in pushing this. It's like the outside wants to fight about who's on the inside, and the inside it all has to come together. It all has to come together. So this for me is a strategy to push forward my mission. And my mission is transforming politics into service. My personal real feeling is I care about the least of these. I do. I've been called Communist Karen more often than I would like. But you know what? At the end of the day, I don't care how rich the rich get. I really don't. If you can do it without screwing your workers, screwing the environment, and paying your fair share of taxes, have at it, man. You want to fly with a gold-plated plane, toilet on the plane. And yeah, I have been on one with a gold-plated toilet. Wow. All the power to you. All the power to you. But your workers need to be able to exist nicely on a 40-hour-a-week job. They need to be able to have healthcare. They need to be able to have a roof over their heads. They need to be able to have education for their kids. So when those things are taken care of, I am extremely very libertarian when it comes to the other end. Okay. I honestly, I don't think they can do it. I actually don't think people can be billionaires without screwing everybody. I don't think it is possible. And the truth is, we'll never really know. But I don't think it is possible. So my concern is with the least of these. I am concerned with how we treat people in this country. I am concerned with how we treat people at the border in this country. And I'm a human person. It is not okay to treat people the way we treat people. I say it with immigration all the time. I don't care what your immigration policy is. I wouldn't necessarily be outraged if you said we're not accepting people for a while. Okay, that's fine. We can discuss your policy. I will discuss policy. You do what most people, I get it. There is no reason in the world that we need to treat people the way we're treating them at our border. None. I don't care if they're criminals. I don't care if you label them a criminal just from being here. This is not how we treat people in the richest country in the world. It's completely unacceptable to me. So those are the things I talk about. We can argue about your path to citizenship. We can have lots of discussions about that. Treating people this way is not okay. It's just not okay. And blaming the victim, I am done with that. All I see are mothers bringing their children over and swimming over razor wire. Yeah, no. I am just not with that. So that's what I'm about. I'm about people being treated kindly and fairly, and I am about justice. We always say reason, passion, and justice. And those are my three key things. And how we treat people in this country is not just. And that's what I'm about.
So how much money do you need to raise to run an effective campaign against Debbie Wasserman-Schultz?
Well, okay. We would like, obviously, to hit at least $1.5 million. Okay. That would be like a nice goal. We did it last time with 400,000 and got close to 30% in a pandemic where we couldn't even canvass for 6 weeks. So, what it takes, I don't think is as much as people think it does if you really have a good grassroots game. And now that we have canvassable areas, that really helps us a lot. We need money. APAC is going to come at me with everything they've got. And because our primary is not until August, they're going to have a nice 2 full months of no one else to be attacking but me. Yeah. So we need money. I will say that we are working on the possibility of there might also be a PAC that is forming that might be of some assistance to us, which I will be able to have more information on for people, like anybody who wanted to drop more than their $6,600 couple donation to me. If you wanted to really help, there will be a means for people if people have big money and they would like to see Debbie Wasserman-Schultz be taken to task for everything that she's done. There is a way to do that. And so, because if like somebody said, hey, I'd love to invest $1 million in you. Okay, well, I can only take 3,300 from you, but by all means, let me find you someplace to put the rest of that. So that's something that in the past grassroots campaigns have been fighting against, is we're always fighting 2 to 1. We're fighting a candidate and their PAC.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming out with something a little bit different. There's something else that's going on now. So, and more on that in the upcoming weeks. But there will be means for people who would really like to just donate a chunk of money to get rid of her. There will be a way to do that for you.
Well, I would imagine that you would get a lot of support even just from people around the country, because Debbie is, even though she represents your part of your neck of the woods, she unfortunately has a lot of power, and that affects all of us in the entire country, because she is, sitting there on her perch.
This interview alone will cost me something. I don't know what, but every time I do something that causes her to have a Marsha moment, something happens to us. Now, the last time I did it was when we had Matt Taibbi on the show. And then after that, we got demonetized for a couple of months. So like, just things happen. So I'm just telling you, whatever, the chips are going to fall where they may. But when she sees this, she's going to lose. And she won't acknowledge that she even has a challenger. She will go the entire thing without even mentioning that she's being challenged, which is fascinating. But she will have things done to us. So that's how.
Well, I mean, look, and yeah, they definitely have a lot of power. When I first got started on YouTube back in 2019, or January 2019, anytime I did a segment on Nancy Pelosi, I mean, it was just a strange, and I documented this every time I did anything negative on Nancy Pelosi, the video got demonetized. And it was like, really? There's nothing in here that's violent. There's nothing in here that's misinformation. There's nothing. I'm just being negative about Nancy Pelosi. And that's, she reps Silicon Valley and they protect her.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with this video. Now, Debbie is not Nancy Pelosi level. She's not.
But no, she's not. But she's still very powerful in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, she is. But a lot of it, I've come to realize, has nothing to do with like or respect. They're all scared of her. Yeah. It's bizarre. And down here, people are so scared of her, which is so bizarre. I keep saying, repeat after me. That's our employee. She is our employee.
Yep.
Now, why people tolerate being talked to by their employees that way, I don't know. But I am not one to be intimidated. I am not one to feel like I am subjugated to anybody. So, bring it. She doesn't concern me at all. Now, she will do things like for example, last time we ran, if you had typed in jenperlman.com or jenperlmanforcongress.com, both of those went directly to her congressional page, which happened directly after I actually sort of cock-blocked her at a Black Lives Matter event. Mm-hmm. I created a situation where she wasn't invited to speak, and she left there pretty angry. And the next thing you know, my name went to her congressional page through some sort of Panamanian company. But so those are the kinds of things that we're dealing with, like a petulant child.
Yeah.
And that's what we're dealing with here. It's unfortunate. But at the end of the day, once people see that it's a little safe and they can dip their toes in, her support is a mile wide, but an inch deep. I got to tell you, the people are mostly scared of her. I've had people inside the party come up to me quietly after events when it's just somebody and me in a parking lot and tell me, please save us from her. And people that would never say that publicly, that she thinks are her friends. So it's very interesting. People are scared of her. Now, maybe she has things on people. I don't know. I'm not tolerating it anymore. So if AIPAC wants to come at me, bring it. Call me a self-loathing Jew. Call me whatever you want to call me. That's fine. I need the money I need to reach the people I need to reach. And they're going to be screaming in their little echo chamber over and over and over again. But they have a very finite audience. I have an endless audience. And that's the difference. So, well, I think our chances are good. I wouldn't do it if I didn't think it were possible. And yeah, it's a long shot. It's always a long shot to take out an incumbent. And again, that's why I create this as part of a bigger campaign and a mission to help the least of these. Because now I'm going to get the next 5 months of national platform to be talking about what I'm talking about. That moves a needle, right? That's why I support Dr. West. It isn't because I think he can win. It's because that's the message that I want circulating. That's the mission that I'm on, is to help the least of these. So that's what it's about. And anything I can do to push that needle just a little bit, until it topples, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm in a position where this is the way I can help. And I don't know very many people that would be able to do this. So, and certainly not as a Jewish person that's an anti-Zionist.
Right.
Which is, I think, needed right now. There is not a single Jew in Congress, in my opinion, that is standing up correctly on this. There's a handful, like Raskin, that I think they voted or abstained or voted present on that resolution. Like they didn't say yes, but they sure as hell didn't say no, or he said it, but then he didn't vote it. I don't know, whatever. I think there's like 35 or 38. You have to check, Jews in Congress between the Senate and the House. It's something like that. And that's a lot. I don't think people understand how many that is, considering the proportion of the population that Jewish people represent.
I think that the Jewish population is 4%, but the representation in Congress is like 15%.
That's right. It's very clearly, which is why when Jews play the anti-Semitism card, it's very frustrating to me. And it's like, I don't have a problem with hate speech. Hate crime is another story. Hate speech, I don't mind. Somebody wants to walk up and down my street saying, I hate Jews, all the power to you, man. I don't care. I actually prefer to know who my bigots are. Sure. So hate speech doesn't bother me. The problem with Jews in this country, a lot of them, is they're so used to not feeling unsafe. Like, actually, we're safe. We're safe. We've made it, people. We've made it. Jews are not the oppressed minority in this country. We're just not. Yes, people say mean things. Yes, they paint swastikas on synagogues. Yes, there are hate crimes. But as far as any systemic oppression, I would love somebody to show me wherein the Jews are systemically oppressed. If somebody could show me that, then I might have a different sort of thought on this. But we're not. They just don't like us. They say mean things. They're anti-Semites. That sucks. Okay? But that's just life. Like, you have to work on the systemic problems, not just the individuals that say mean things.
Right. Well, and the reality is that Jews have a disproportionate amount of power for the population. Just like you said, Congress, in media, in money, there's a disproportionate, they're not 4%.
Right. And so we're not disenfranchised. We are not the oppressed. Jews are not victims. We're survivors. We're survivors. Be proud of that. Be proud of that. But stop playing the victim card. Well, Debbie does it because she doesn't have a whole lot else. She does her breast cancer survivor and her anti-Semite card. Those are her two big ones. Right. But enough. Jews are not victims, and I'm tired of being portrayed that way. We are beyond not victims. We are we've thrived. Right. I think it's safe to say that the Jews have thrived. And so, And when you see hate crimes, like somebody going into a synagogue and shit, yes, that's a big problem. And I believe that hate crimes need to be prosecuted to the nth degree. I am all for hate crime enhancement, all for it. I am all for it. But we see just as many killings, if not more, of many other subjugated groups of people. When you see somebody go into a black supermarket in a black neighborhood and start gunning people down, those are people that are subjected to a systemic amount of oppression. That is a concerning problem. The Jews are not those people. Right. And I reject that. And so that is what they're trying to do. Oh, they're mean to us. They painted swastikas on. Really? You will not survive this world, people, if that is where you're going to get caught up. And I quote the great Tim Black on that. I can't claim that one, but it's like, just seriously. And so that's where I am. And I'm just not having it with them anymore. And I feel infinitely more enraged and emboldened this time. I will tell you that.
It sounds that way. And I think you're right. You've built up more of an audience. You've built up more of a name. Debbie Wasserman-Schultz, I think, has done the opposite in a lot of ways. I think people are very outraged by the war that is going on, and they don't want to continue supporting it in any way. So
Exactly.
I do think that you have much more of a fighting chance this time. We wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
And I think there's going to be a lot of people in this country who would like to see Debbie Wasserman-Schultz ousted. So I think whatever you set up for fundraising will probably be pretty effective.
Yeah.
We do have your website. So it is gen2024.org. That is
Yes.
where people can go now to donate, to get started on donating to the
And
campaign that
please,
is hopefully going to oust Debbie Wasserman-Schultz.
we are just starting, and soon we will have obviously a full website. Like all of that stuff happens,
Right.
but it like takes money to make money.
Yeah.
And it's a chicken and an egg. So that's what it is. But we definitely need help. There's no way around it. And I will special shout out to anybody in Wyoming. Do you have any Wyoming people out there? Because Wyoming is the only state wherein I did not get a donation the last time we ran.
Really? Well,
Yes.
there's not a lot of people in
I
Wyoming
don't
to start.
care. Somebody out there in Wyoming, send me a buck. I
Okay.
feel like, and I was blaming it on the Cheneys. It was so funny. I'm like, I think this is a Cheney problem. But yeah, no, we need all the help we can get. Obviously, for me personally, small, like regular monthly small dollar donors is the best. Like I love having a network. I love having an army. And I feel like when people are monthly donors, they're part of the army and they're part of our mission. Not that a one-time donation isn't nice, it's lovely. But I feel like when you're monthly, it's like I feel like you're on the campaign with us.
Mhm.
So I love that the most. I do. And I'm always the proudest to say how many donors we got more than how much money we got. And yeah, come on, Wyoming. Show up.
All right, Jen Perlman, good luck to you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for being here. Thanks for announcing your candidacy today here on this show. Really appreciate. And also just, good luck, man. Get rid of that woman.
I'm
Debbie
sure,
Wasserman-Schultz.
and I'm sure you'd be happy to have us back on at some point
course,
to
yes.
chat. Yeah. I'm working on it, but thank you so much.
All right, Jen. Thank you. Good luck.
Bye.